Geog A to Z supporting the National Festival of Fieldwork from the Geographical Association. Today is J for journey, and there's a lot to say here, so I'm only going to cover the very basics here. There's a lot more to think about and research as you think about how we deal with our traffic and our streets and our roads. So, first of all, it's to consider the road signage, the everyday road signage, the on the street, permanent or temporary signage that you might see, and all the different colours and shapes that you might get children to understand. And the whole issue of road understanding and road safety is perhaps something that's not as much on the agenda, perhaps, as when I was at school in the 1980s when we had road safety officers coming to school. So it perhaps is within geography or PSHE that the understanding of the roads around us perhaps could be a really useful focus for your field work. So it's about safety, but it's about understanding as well, and considering the different users of those roads as we go on our daily journeys, either on foot, on bicycle, or on public transport, or in a private car as well. So, road signs are all about directions and warnings, and they are about regulations. They are about laws and rules that we all need to follow, whether that's where we're crossing the roads ourselves, maybe on a zebra crossing, or maybe what the sorts of things are that the cars need to do as well. And it's worth just going down a bit of an alleyway just before we start about the design of the different road signs that we see, and celebrating the people from the last 50 or 60 years who've put us on the map really across the globe. Margaret Calvert in particular, and Josh Kinnear, who designed the transport font, that font that just makes the graphical interface, the icons that we see on the road, far more interesting to look at and far clearer. So do perhaps bear those in mind because they have been copied around the world. They are used for all sorts of different purposes. And as you can see here, an example from Korea was one that I've seen, and you may have seen these yourself, perhaps in Commonwealth countries as well. So that's the kind of road signage perspective that you need to think about, and the signs that sometimes bleed out onto the public footpaths and highways and byways near you as well. The second thing we're going to be thinking about is also the traffic being stopped, the public sometimes being stopped from going around certain areas, and that's to think about the bollards that you might see around you. And I've picked some historic ones that I've spotted out and about in London, in Manchester, and in Glasgow. I think the left-hand side one was there. And these are historic ones. As you can see there, the Handstown one is well over 200 years old. It's amazing that that cast iron bollard and others around there have been there for quite so long, stopping vehicles, motor vehicles, or other sorts of vehicles impinging on the public footway, which is what they're really all about. And it's worth looking at the word bollard, World Bollard Association, if you've never come across it, as a kind of tongue-in-cheek way of seeing how bollards can proliferate sometimes around the streetscape. Sometimes there are too many in a way to kind of stop people coming and going. And of course, we've got more modern ones now. You may have seen those rising and falling, the automatic ones that help vehicles or refuse trucks get in and out of busy city spaces from time to time. And of course, these have often been made somewhere, and certainly the more historic ones, maybe 50 or 60 or more years old, will say the specific location in the country that they are from. So it's worth trying to seek these out because often they have been conserved and preserved. So that's road signs and general signs and bollards. Now we need to think about the ways that traffic, again, is controlled and persuaded sometimes through fines to make sure that it doesn't get into these sorts of high speed um, issues. So we've got the speed cameras, the ultra low emission zone cameras, certainly in big cities like London. We've got congestion zone cameras. We've got one way or box junction cameras that may stop cars or may fine cars or may provide a revenue stream sometimes for councils to make sure that they don't have traffic flowing in the directions that they choose not to have it. And they're all linking really with the idea that we have 20-mile-an-hour zones, 30-mile-an-hour zones, particularly in residential areas near your school, to stop the speed limit being broken and to cut down on road collisions and road fatalities, essentially. And this goes alongside things like sleeping policemen, all the other kind of road calming measures that we might have that I've not even got on this list. And then, of course, you've got cat's eyes. You've got those designed and created by Percy Shaw studs in tarmac that you could think about. And then we've got the crossings as well that you can think about, the Green Man crossings, the Pelican crossings, the zebra crossings. Again, the idea of a Belisha beacon invented, named after a government minister in the 1930s, worth reflecting on those as well, alongside the different types of pavement that you might see. Sometimes the pavement's very broken or eroded, maybe there are tree roots coming through it in particular places. It's not a very even and level thing to cross, but you've got the tactile paving that supports people with particular disabilities or poor sight, because they may need to know where the edge of the road actually is. So worth reflecting on all of that. And then finally, the kind of barriers that we might have that are a bit more broad than just bollards. So you've got railings, you've got level crossings, and a whole range of different railings you'll see in my pictures here. Again, sometimes railings that have been created, so examples there from Wales, but railings that will really give a sense sometimes of history and the past. And of course, remember that a lot of these railings in the Second World War were said to have been cut down. You may well see perhaps around churchyards or more historic neighborhoods, if they've not been replaced, you'll see these little stubs where the railings were cut down, supposedly to melt down for the war effort. I mean, whether that was true or not, there are some urban myths around that as well. But these are an example of older railings here. And you'll see lots of different designs, many of which will have been replaced, as I say, after the Second World War, but also around promenades, around the coast. They're obviously meant to stop you from going places. You've sometimes got temporary railings as well. This is Harris fencing, worth looking into that and why that's sometimes put up there to stop people coming in or going out. And of course, around transport infrastructure, again, to keep us safe, to stop us falling down a gap or falling onto a rail line. Worth, again, pointing out explicitly where these are and why they are there, and when we're telling the story of the streets to a group of children. And again, some examples here by the River Thames. So level crossings, as I just mentioned just before, again, an interesting thing to have temporary barriers, barriers that open and close, barriers that are automatic. There's nobody there, as there would have been in the past. Putting that up and putting that down. So how do they work? Have the children ever gone across a level crossing? Why would you not have a bridge? Is there no space for a bridge? Is there no purpose for a bridge? Is this not a very commonly used line? But even in urban London, you will find if you go down some side streets, suddenly your progress will be stopped by this level crossing. And there's very much a level of trust here that children need to realise. You could hop over, you could race across, you could take a risk, but children need to be explicitly have this explained to them, that kind of purpose and the reasoning behind a level crossing there. And then, of course, you've got the kind of more temporary measures. You can see an example here of where there's been a water burst, and the local fire service and Thames Water will have been there very, very quickly to kind of sort out the pipes underneath the road. But children need to see these traffic cones and realise that they're a kind of stopgap measure, an emergency measure. Have they ever seen them? What colour are they? What design are they? Can they be easily carried around? So these seem like very common or garden, very everyday things, but they are worth explicitly pointing out to children because, as I say, they're the story of our everyday streets. Tomorrow, coming up, is waste management. So look forward to sharing that with you then.